oh, he committed this war crime, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. It's probably made up by the CIA anyway. You know, we shouldn't be these kind of crazy online neo-Nazi edgelords who say the N-word. We need to present ourselves as just normal people who love our country and love God and want to protect our culture. Who is your favorite dictator? I'm personally partial to foreign intervention is ever justified, assuming it pushes America's interests. Yeah, definitely. A lot of conservatives these days, especially America First conservatives, kind of think that America should just never get involved in any foreign wars. And I think that comes from a good place, which is noticing that the wars we're currently involved in are cringe. But I would be in favor of foreign wars if they were for a good cause. For instance, World War II. A lot of conservatives nowadays think we should never have gotten into World War II, but I actually think it was good to save Europe from the Nazis and to end the Holocaust. I think those were good things to do, if for no other reason than that Germany was, destroying France and Britain, and that had to be put a stop to. Thoughts on the temperance movement, and should conservatives take a more dry stance on alcohol? I have kind of mixed feelings on this because, on the one hand, alcohol does cause a lot of actual real problems. I mean, drunk drivers, addiction is really real. I know plenty of people who are addicted to alcohol, and they're college students, so it's kind of fun and funny, but once they graduate, they're just addicts, and that could genuinely ruin their lives. So I think it's kind of overplayed to be, alcohol's great. Yeah, conservatives, we love alcohol. We love beer. Yeah, let's all get drunk. But at the end of the day, I do like alcohol. I do think it's a net positive for society. As bad as alcoholism is, most people use alcohol moderately. Maybe they get a little tipsy every once in a while. I don't really care. It's a social lubricant. It gives people a good time. It's tasty. It's fun. It's culture. It's tradition. Favorite and least favorite founding father. My favorite is definitely Alexander Hamilton, just because he kind of represents the good sides of the founding fathers. His reason for revolting against the British wasn't like liberalism and, life, liberty, and property and freedom at all costs. It was more, this is impractical for us to be ruled by a nation across the sea, as he says in the musical.
Why should a tiny island across the sea regulate the price of tea?
And that just is true. I think the American Revolution ultimately was justified because it is good for us to be an independent nation, and we've been tremendously successful after our independence. The things that I dislike about the American Revolution are its liberalism and its kind of mob rule mentality, and Alexander Hamilton really was against that. He was more of an authoritarian. He was really into a strong executive branch and a strong central federal government. The thing that I like the most about Alexander Hamilton is that he supported a lifetime executive, which I think is a really good idea. I mean, that would definitely cut down on, the politicization of the country. It would take away a lot of the downsides of democracy. You would have less frequent votes. People would be in office for their whole lives, so they would have a much lower time preference and would think long term instead of just thinking what's going to be popular in the next 4 years. So I think if we had a lifetime executive, our politicians would be much less influenced by the mob and much less influenced by popularity and much more able to think what is actually a good idea long term. My least favorite founding father is Thomas Jefferson because he was just an absolute libertarian. The guy supported the French Revolution, for crying out loud. Well, of course I denounce violence, but he said, even if the French Revolution went so far in their mass murder that there were only 2 people left alive in France, it would still be good because it would allow the prosperity of liberty and equality. So Thomas Jefferson kind of represents the parts of the founding fathers that I hate, which is liberalism. And unfortunately, that side of the founding ideas has taken dominance over the more authoritarian Hamiltonian Federalist side. The Democratic Republicans have won, the Jeffersonians have triumphed. The average American is indoctrinated to think that America is about liberty and freedom, when really it was about natural aristocracy and, meritocracy. So this idea that America is fundamentally about freedom, that's what we stand for, really comes from Jefferson. Aside from Dune, which other books or films would you consider to be conservative masterpieces? example, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is definitely a great example. I think that pretty much perfectly encapsulates what I believe the conservative movement should stand for. It's all about, tradition and simple life and the trees and the forests and the landscapes. It's just so beautiful. I think if everyone read Lord of the Rings, our problems as a society would basically be fixed. My personal favorite inherently conservative works are C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. The whole book is against this kind of 20th century progressive technological transhumanism that C.S. Lewis saw emerging on the left and the right. My film pick would be Studio Ghibli film, Princess Mononoke. Unironically, this is one of the most conservative films I've ever seen. It's basically Avatar, but good. Avatar, but based. Because it has the same themes about, preserving nature, and there's this natural, beautiful, pristine world that is being kind of ruined by the technological industrial revolution. But it is a very nuanced film in that it also presents the good sides of civilization. So on the one hand, the human city is, tearing down the trees and polluting the river and all that kind of stuff, which is very bad. But what I like about this film is it also points out that technology and the Industrial Revolution allows us to heal people better and provide better quality of life and help disabled people to live good lives. And all of that is really worth preserving, which is why I'm not some sort of anarcho-primitivist. The Industrial Revolution has its downsides, and we should definitely work to protect the environment. But at the end of the day, human progress and development is a good thing. And Princess Mononoke kind of perfectly captures that balance in a really beautiful and profound way. The McDonald asks, thoughts on Nick F. I won't say the full name because YouTube doesn't like that. I don't really like him. I think he's way too conspiracy-minded, and he's also just terrible optics. I mean, this guy says the N-word and racial slurs and just kind of disgusting, sexual things all the time. It's really just low class, and it makes us look really bad. The dissident right needs to carry itself with dignity and a degree of normalcy. We need to really be normal people. We shouldn't be these kind of crazy online neo-Nazi edgelords who say the N-word. We need to present ourselves as just normal people who love our country and love God and want to protect our culture. That's it. And normal people can get on board with that. But when we go around, saying the N-word and, yo, man, I hate Mexicans, Hitler was kind of based, actually, that's gonna destroy us. What are you interested in other than politics? I do a lot of writing. I have written a few fictional novels. Of course, they have a lot of, kind of political and philosophical themes. That's really my passion. And one day I might actually release one of those books. And let me know if any of you guys would actually buy that. Anita asks, what has been your political journey? Where did you start? Where did you go? And where are you now? Well, I started as just kind of a boomer conservative. I didn't really have political takes, but when I was 13, I kind of discovered libertarianism, and I realized that property rights, life, liberty, property, Locke's formula, gives us a very consistent and simple answer to politics. Does it violate liberty? Then don't do it. But as I progressed, I took that farther and farther to its logical conclusion. And I've said this many times on the channel, the logical conclusion of the existence of property rights is anarcho-capitalism. And you can try to get around that with some sort of, cringe social contract, but that's all stupid. None of it is really consistent. The only consistent propertarians are anarcho-capitalists. And so I kind of took that as far as it could possibly go, and I realized this is leading me to some disgusting conclusions. It led me to support, all kinds of degeneracy, not because I thought it was moral, but because I thought it doesn't violate anyone's rights. And I kind of realized I was ending up in this disgusting worldview where people are basically allowed to ruin their own lives and abuse themselves and completely destroy our society and also the environment. And I've always been temperamentally environmentalist, so I was like, no, this doesn't work. And then I realized that there's no philosophical justification for the NAP and that property rights are just kind of a spook. And so I rejected the whole thing. And so then I was kind of politically homeless for a while, but I ended up, I watched Fight Club and I read the Unabomber Manifesto and I became a anarcho-primitivist. I read John Zerzan. I still have his book here, Against Civilization. Actually a pretty good book. I basically became a total hippie. I deleted social media. I got rid of technology. I slept outside every night for a while, in the fresh air under the stars. It's actually pretty based, and I still have a lot of sympathy for anarcho-primitivism, but eventually I kind of realized that it's cold outside, and living as a wild human is kind of nasty, poor, brutish, and short. And for all the beauty of the wilderness, which I really do want to preserve, it is not the most comfortable life, and we really can improve the world through technology if we're careful. So then I kind of embraced normalcy. I became what I called based and blue-pilled. I just accepted liberal modernity. I just liked the modern world as it is. I actually started watching Vosh during this time, and I got very into market socialism because I kind of figured if democracy is good in the government, why wouldn't it be good in the workplace? But even then, I was never really a leftist. I believed in, worker co-ops, but I always believed in the free market as well. I know that sounds like the stereotype of just a teenager whose political beliefs are all over the place, and it is that to some extent, but I also think I did have good reasons for what I believed at every stage. And throughout all of this, circling around the political compass, certain things were always very consistent. I was always an environmentalist. What do you think about traditionalist philosophers, especially Evola, Guénon, am I pronouncing that right? Guénon, and Dugin. I'm not really a big fan of the traditionalist school. I really don't like how Evola embraces this warrior paganism. He has this quote that's the blood of the warrior is closer to God than the prayers of the pious. And I think that's a fundamentally anti-Christian idea. A lot of these traditionalists kind of embrace this Hindu idea of, warriors and conquering and being a Aryan bloodthirsty, and I don't think that's what Western civilization is about. I think you could argue that what made Western civilization great was that it rejected that kind of paganism and that warrior mentality where it's all about conquering and, destroying your enemies and bloodshed. What Western civilization did was say, no, we're not gonna just murder people, we're gonna have just war. That's Christendom's principle, just war. We're going to focus on writing and beauty and architecture and culture. And all of that is what made us great. We aren't great because we're really good warriors and we're really good at killing innocent people. Evola kind of has this idea that war is a good thing. Not just, it's good to defend yourself and your country, but it's actively good to seek out war. And the world would be a worse place if there was no war, because war is this kind of purifying fire that makes us into more noble, excellent, bloodthirsty Ubermensches. And I think that's a fundamentally non-Christian idea. I think the only real Christian take is that war is bad. It's good to defend yourself. It's good to be, a hero, but not because war is noble, but because what you're protecting is sacred. Tolkien has a really good quote on this. Faramir says this in Lord of the Rings. He says, "I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend." To me, that's the Christian take. War is not good. War is a necessary evil, and what's really beautiful and good is the peaceful homeland that they're protecting. What are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Israel versus Palestine, and other international conflicts? I think that Ukraine should probably rule itself. I'm not an expert on this by any means, but what I've heard is that the Ukrainians that are allegedly, Russians who should really be part of Russia, they don't want to be part of Russia. They think of themselves as Ukrainians. As for Israel versus Palestine, I think that the creation of Israel was unjust, but now that it does exist, I don't think it should be wiped off the map. I mean, I think the people that have been living there for, 80 years should be allowed to continue living there. But also I think that Palestine does deserve independence. And I think Israel's killing of so many innocent Palestinians is not only unjustified, but in the long run, it's bad for them because it's just going to create more terrorists and more extremism. If you are some Palestinian kid who sees your neighborhood blown up, your father, killed by shrapnel, your entire neighborhood and city decimated, million refugees driven out from their homes, 40,000 innocent people killed, how do you think you're going to feel about Israel? What do you think is going to happen when Hamas comes to you and, tries to recruit you to go on a suicide mission? By participating in these brutal acts, Israel is creating their own enemy. They should defend themselves and they should try to take out Hamas, but they should do so in a way that doesn't kill innocent people. Superlion, my buddy, my Discord mod, says, thoughts on Falangism, especially its view on the economy and labor. I think they're kind of overrated. They're national syndicalists, which basically means that they support worker co-ops. It's literally just Fascism with Catholic characteristics. People don't realize this, but Mondragon was actually established under Franco's rule. It's a fundamentally democratic ideology that I just think is incredibly stupid. I did a separate video on why worker co-ops are a bad idea, but I think people see the aesthetics of, Franco and fascist Spain and think, they're super based and cool. But at the end of the day, their economics was pretty bad. I cannot say this guy's name, but he's an OG viewer of the channel. He says, "What is your best argument against atheism pro-religion?" The simplest argument is just the argument from testimony. And I always ask it like this. Do you believe in Alexander the Great? Why? Well, because this historical source says that Alexander the Great existed. Okay, so we agree that prima facie, ceteris paribus, we should trust historical documents. Well, yeah, I guess so. You have to, because otherwise you can't do any history. All of history, we don't have photographic evidence or videos of Julius Caesar or the Punic Wars or Alexander the Great. We have to rely on manuscripts and testimony, and we have to assume that they're telling the truth. So the question is, if you're willing to accept the manuscripts that say that Julius Caesar did X or Alexander died in this year or whatever, why would you not accept the gospel manuscripts? Well, because they have miracles, and miracles are impossible. Says who? If God exists, miracles are possible, so you're really just begging the question. If we don't assume that people are telling the truth until we have reason not to, we can't know anything. We can't trust our history books, we can't trust what our friends tell us, we can't trust anything unless we've seen it with our eyes. And nobody holds themselves to that epistemological standard, so why do people insist on not trusting the manuscripts when it comes to Jesus? It's because they just don't want to believe in God. Do you think Mr. Z's Utahism, aka redrawing the state borders to suit the needs of the several distinct nations within America, is a good contemplation? Absolutely. I am fully on board with Utahism. I am a 100% proud Utahist patriot. The American federalist system is a fundamentally good idea that has been completely botched. At this point, I think it might just be better to just get rid of the federal government and have each state secede. But if we could make it work through something like Utahism and by limiting the federal government to only dealing with federal matters instead of trying to interfere in the individual states, I think that would be much more akin to the original vision of federalism. So if we could do Utahism, I'd be fully on. Bass Creation Broadcast says, "What is the right wing? You don't need to include libertarians to impress me." I think that the right is defined by our endorsing of hierarchy. So I think that libertarians can fall into the right when they endorse hierarchy. So you have kind of the left libertarians that want everyone to be equal, but the right libertarians, people like Hoppe or Rothbard in his later years, they are all in favor of, some people are better than others. Some people are going to have more power in society, and that's okay. So I think the right is about hierarchy, and the left is about equality. Given the regime would jump at the opportunity to crack down on the right, what should we do about the migration and Islam crisis? Well, obviously, close the borders, but I think an underrated aspect of this is that we have to stop bombing their countries. We have to stop destabilizing the Middle East, because our support of, revolutions and Israel and conflict is what's driving these people to flee to Europe. And that doesn't mean we should let them in. It means that we should stop screwing around in the Middle East.
I had an incredibly vivid dream last night.
What happened?
Dreamt about a talking sea sponge. He lived at the bottom of the ocean in a pineapple of all places, and his best friend was an obese starfish, a really useless guy.
What was his name?
The sponge, Peter Griffin.
These are exciting times. The channel is growing. People are waking up. The masses are becoming Arthur Greenwood pilled. But we still have a long way to go. My last channel was demonetized, and they might do the exact same thing to this one. So if you like what I do and you want to help me out, if you want to help my channel grow, there are 4 things you can do. 1, leave a comment. Just say anything, literally anything, and that will be a huge help for the algorithm. 2, send the video to a friend. I know you have some normie friend who needs to hear this. 4, most importantly, consider joining my Patreon. You'll also get to join our members-only Discord server, where you can talk with me and the boys about life and politics and history. It's a great time. We have weekly phone calls, and I have genuinely become really good friends with some of the guys in the server. Because we have to stick together, It's rough out there. We need networks of highly disciplined, highly intelligent men. If you want to join my network, All it costs is $1 a month. That adds up to $12 a year, which is nothing. That's less than an hour of work. And in exchange, you get to be my friend forever.